My next guest could be one of the most influential women in politics ahead of the next general election. Alex Phillips is the new face of Reform UK, and polling shows they're gaining popularity, and it could be a real threat to the Conservatives. She's a Brexiteer, former MEP, and wants to smash through the red wall. Alex joins us now. Alex, why have you decided to come? Because you were a Brexit MP for the Brexit Party MEP for, what, 6 months? You, as you've said to me, you campaigned vigorously for redundancy. Yeah. What has made you decide to get back into politics now?
Gosh, well, there's multifaceted reasons. I mean, I've been in politics for a long time, and the woman that no one's really heard of, but I was Nigel Farage's great enabler for the best part of a decade, worked really, really hard to get a referendum and then through the Brexit Party to get Brexit done. And essentially, the Brexit Party has been in a coma for 2 years. It's been on life support. It's been ticking over, rebranded as Reform, building from the bottom up. And I had actually rejoined the Conservative Party. I thought maybe my, fringe politics.
And are you still
days...
a member?
No. I did my coming out, so to speak, with the Telegraph, and quickly had an email from the chairman saying bye-bye. So that's fair enough. But just from talking to people, I kind of thought, well, maybe we're back to two-party politics and that the Conservatives are going to get this right now. But I feel like I've been in an abusive relationship with them. I feel like I've been lied to. I've been gaslit.
Lied to? That's a bit strong.
But in terms of the last time, before this last time, as a member of the Conservative Party, was when Theresa May first broke through onto the scene as the PM. And she said, I'm going to do fracking, I'm going to bring back grammar schools, I'm going to have proper Brexit. None of it. And so I thought, OK, I'm done with this now. And then it was very clear, because of the political stalemate going on over Brexit, and a lot of the Conservative Party back then were the disablers, in fact, the Dominic Grieves and Anna Soubry's of this world. And so it was natural for me to go and rejoin Nigel and say, we've got to push this through.
But Alex, you knew that those days, they were never going to be easy. They were always going to...
No,
I mean, the Anna Soubry's, you're right, and the Dominic Grieves, it was always going to be a fight.
Yeah, and
because we were fighting for sovereignty, so it was really important.
And we were this close. We were this close to losing it, which is why the Brexit Party stood down all the candidates.
Which is why proroguement happened.
And, why the Brexit Party stood down a load of candidates and said, here you go. Then the Conservative Party got an 80-seat majority, and I thought, finally... This is it. We're going to get Brexit done. I mean, look, the withdrawal agreement is a mess, but I don't actually blame Boris for that, because we were this close to losing it that something had to be delivered and signed. But then I thought, well, look, we need to now work on this. We need to actually seize the benefits of sovereignty and, self-assertiveness as a country that actually does put Britain first and has confidence in our future. And then, of course, the pandemic came. And I understand that that delayed a lot of things. And I'm not angry at the fact that there was this pregnant pause in the middle of politics where things couldn't really get done. But then after that, the protracted psychodrama of last year, where we had numerous different chancellors, with the Prime Minister changing all the time, this long drawn-out leadership contest, which essentially drove the country into the ground economically. No wonder the IMF have said, you're in an economic mess. Why on earth would anyone invest in Britain when they don't even know who the Chancellor is or what the agenda is?
Oh, come on, Alex. The IMF never predicts anything right.
I agree with you on that. I do agree with you on that.
Most of the things the IMF say they get wrong.
But, the Conservatives, we've had a Conservative-led government for 12 years, and I can't really identify what the legacy is. And that's a crying shame. I don't want the Conservative Party to do badly. I never have done. I want them to be better. But do you accept,
Alex, that even though it was 2016 when we had that referendum, and even though Boris Johnson delivered on Brexit, and, you're quite right, it was... I mean, guys, you remember, the party was in... The position we were in then was in danger of everything being lost.
Oh, I know.
So, where we are now is in a very different position to where we were in 2016.
But if I'd been in a coma for a decade and woke up and looked at the level of taxation we've got, looked at the paucity of our public services, looked at the march of sort of mad neoliberal views that are drowning out common sense opinion and a majority-held opinion, I'd think we've had a radical socialist government for a decade, not a right-wing government. And what I've realised is as soon as that electoral threat is taken away from the right wing of politics, the sense of duty and service to people seems to diminish. The Conservatives act better when they've got a challenge. And I think we're in a situation now, everyone I know who's, from our side of politics is saying, I just can't vote Conservative. I can't forgive them for what's gone on. I can't forgive them for squandering the 80-seat majority. Whether you agree with that or not, that is a very widely held point of view, and the polling shows that. So who do they vote for? Because they've either got the Labour Party, who are pretending to be centrist, and as soon as they get to the levers of power, they won't be, and then all the other radical left parties. So where does that vote go? And I think it's fresh and healthy in a democracy to provide people with a vehicle that they can trust, with a vehicle they want to vote for, rather than think, I'm obliged to vote for either a party that seemingly can't deliver what I want, or a party that doesn't want to deliver what I want. How about voting for something that says it will deliver what I want?
And that's great. I would encourage anyone who has strong health views like yours and wants to be a part of what happens in Westminster and to deliver on the things that you want to deliver on. But how are you going to do that? Are you going to stand for a seat at the next general election?
Yeah, I will do. And
where are you going then?
Well, I don't know, but we're far out
you
from
may
the
have
elections.
noticed there's just become a vacancy in the
reform's cranking up now. So let's see what happens with the map, the electoral map, and where target seats might fall. And under the first past the post system, I'm very alive to the fact that it's almost impossible. But is it impossible? You know, if the collective enough said this could be a solution to our problems, then actually no, it isn't then too long a shot.
So, you know, I do remember, having been around for a very long time, a point at which I think it was 2012 when UKIP were presenting a very real threat to the Conservative Party. I mean, I know they
2013.
2013.
Yeah, 2013
and
2014.
I know they spooked David Cameron and George Osborne a lot at the time.
A lot of things that happened, you know, actually having the opportunity to have a referendum wouldn't have happened without the UKIP threat. I think Brexit would have been lost without the Brexit Party threat. So this is what I'm talking about. Actually, as soon as that threat disappears, something happens to the Conservatives where they start playing parlour games and you know, pursuing these intra-party fights and wrestling for the heart of what Conservative ideology should be. They take their eye off the ball and they stop delivering.
It's hurting me listening to you now, Alex.
You know, it hurts me too.
Quentin and Christopher, what do you think?
Well, Alex describes a very intoxicating brew, and I can quite understand a lot of her feelings about this. But I think that there was a time, and I think it's probably still true to an extent at the moment, that after all the Boris downfall and the Truss explosion, I think there was a public demand for some calmer times, less tumult. Went up the cry, and I think that's probably there's this stability. I mean, Rishi Sunak is not a most entertaining person politically, but the fact that he's not noisy and the fact that he isn't radical, I think, has a certain appeal. And I suspect he's probably a bit more right-wing himself than he's allowing us to see at the moment.
I agree with you on that, actually, and I have no problem with Rishi. I like Rishi, actually. You know, if I could have picked anybody from the Conservative Party to be PM, it would be Rishi. But I just have this feeling that the party inherently, the Conservative Party, seems to be broken. It doesn't seem to be able to... With an 80-seat majority to mess it up, as much as they have done, it's unforgivable.
Righties are very always having arguments, and that's part of being on the right, isn't it?
So why not welcome someone else
I think you've
Is it time for reform, Christopher?
It is, but I think the Tory party has lost its way on taxation and other areas. And what Richard Tyson and you, Alex, are doing with reform is sitting there to the right of the Tory party, drawing the party probably towards where it should be for the election. But there's some good polling out this week we did in the Telegraph, showing that 6% of the votes will go to reform of the election.
How many?
6% of the votes, but no MPs. Instead, it hollows out the Tory support and gives Labour an even bigger win.
So can I ask a question?
So do you worry you're giving Labour power?
Are you putting candidates forward at the local elections in May?
Yeah, I've got lots, and there's some stories about that coming out soon. I can't break them right now, but you know, it's interesting. There's always been this fallacy that a sort of another party on the right, because what you've got to remember is the Conservatives have a monopoly of the right. The Labour don't have a monopoly of the left. But, you know, there's this idea that, therefore, if a party emerges on the right, it's going to eat into the Conservative votes. Now, I spent a lot of time at UKIP back when it was a sensible party and was really an electoral threat. And so I know what the data was and the polling and the psephology and the demographics. And actually, 1/3 of UKIP's vote came from Tories, 1/3 came from Labour, another third came from people who hadn't
So,
wanted
Alex,
to
I've
vote
got to
anybody.
take issue with that because I've seen Stephen Day, Cheadle, 2001. I've seen Conservative MPs lose their seats because UKIP ate into their votes.
Yeah.
I've seen that happen.
I've seen what happened in 2019, where actually the Conservatives managed to break through into Labour-held seats that they didn't stand a chance of getting until the debate was opened out by someone like Nigel Farage to a demographic who wouldn't have ever dreamt of voting Conservative.
Can I ask one thing? Are you in talks with any Tory MPs about joining Reform? There's one here who's standing down.
Oh, we'd love you.
I'm not
We'd love
standing
you.
down to stand again.
We'd love you. No, I'm not personally doing that, and it's not my place to do that.
Because that would be a real worry, I think, for Rishi Sunak.
I think what's going to happen, and Reform has been building up quietly and slowly in the background, and now it's time to, you know, get the turbo boosters fired up and say, we're here, learn about us, consider us. And I think when that happens, things could move, and they could move quickly. Maybe the needle won't be moved at all, but I think things could move and could move quickly. And when that starts to happen, it creates a domino effect.
Well,
so it
Alex,
could be interesting.
You're scaring me, and I'm standing down. So what I'd like to talk to you about...
We have time to persuade you.
What I'd like to talk about is women in politics. You know, we have this thing in the Conservative Party, ask her to stand, this kind of campaign. I would never ask any woman to stand for politics, ever. I would never... I want to use the word allow, but I can't allow, they're all in their 30s. I would never encourage my 3 daughters to become female MPs. It's very different. And, you know, I feel like I've been there 5 minutes. It's very different from when I started 18, 19 years ago. The abuse and, you know, I'm not going to go into details, but, you know, you're a woman and you're about to stand for politics. What do you think about what women have to face in politics now?
It's not just politics, is it? This is the
No,
point. There's
true.
a coarsening. There's
true.
a coarsening of what's going on in society in general, and a toxicity which no one's talking about, which is, I mean, you know, we bang on about having all-female shortlists. I hate that stuff. I'm really not for that sort of positive discrimination. I think it undermines talented women. But what no one's talking about is the fact that we've got Met police officers, you know, stating misogynistic views, discussing rape, sharing pornography in WhatsApp groups. It's not just police officers doing this. It's not just the fire service. It's a group of guys in an estate agency. I've always had this, well, for a long time, I've held this belief that something has happened since hardcore pornography became normalised, that women have once again been essentially denigrated to being objects, to being things that can be traded, to being dehumanised, and that this coarsening is actually now beginning to take root across society, and it emboldens people.
It's the normalisation of language that is discussed. So, you know, 10 years ago, people would make comments that they'd make, you know, young men would make, odd men would make, sat in their underpants in their mum's attics on a laptop, you know, and they'd put things online that they would never dream of going saying to anybody out in the street. But over a period of time, we've seen the normalisation of that kind of language and rhetoric. Now people, we see it all the time on videos, now people do it, we've all seen the coarsening of public language and how people address each other.
And there's an expectation being placed so heavily on little girls to look like Kardashians, who have no discernible talents. They're not actresses, they don't sing songs, they're essentially made on a surgeon's table for the male gaze. And this pressure is being piled on women, but at the same time, it's distorting the view that men have of women. What I'd say to all women anywhere is, first of all, get off Instagram if you're doing all that and, you know, getting your stuff out.
And I'd agree with you. But, you know, the advice that is given to many women is just don't look. Why shouldn't we look? Why should it be OK for men to look, but women can't look? Right. Why should it be OK for men to take pictures and put them on Instagram, but not OK for women?
Do you know
and
what?
I think that's part of the problem. Women should be able to do exactly what they want to do, exactly the same as men do. We shouldn't have to do something else or behave differently just in order to protect ourselves.
I agree with that, but there's always biological truths about the different wiring of brains between men and women, and a transaction that happens, you know, between the two sexes when it comes to relationships, which is, you know, our power's being fundamentally eroded in that department. But, you know, I would say to any woman out there, dress how you want, you know, put on, look at me, I'm covered in makeup, I love it, I'm a girly girl in many respects, but I don't define myself by my appearance, I define myself by my intelligence. And then I'd say to anybody on social media, you don't have to read the comments.
You're standing down now. Do you feel you could have done more when you were running the culture department on this? I mean,
yeah, when I arrived in the department, the online safety bill, it was literally... the advice that was given to me by former culture secretary was, it's a horrible bill, kick it into the weeds. And actually that was almost like throwing down a gauntlet for me. Because when I realised what that bill could achieve and what I could do with it, I got 97% of that bill passed through Parliament before I left, protecting women and young girls online from some of the awful, insidious dreadful behaviour that changes, that gives them terrible outcomes was like my main priority. And, you know, you asked me before, what would I want to be remembered for? I think doing that, actually.
Do you know, I hope you are remembered for it, because at the moment it's being torn to pieces, isn't it? It was supposed to be, you know, it's supposed to get through Parliament much sooner. It's being constantly watered down, and I think that there are elements of that bill that don't even go far enough.
Oh,
I would have no argument with saying, put a paywall on pornography sites, and if men go, oh, I wouldn't want to trust my card details on a site like that. OK, so what do you think the provenance of those videos are? Are you sure that woman's not being trafficked? Are you sure that woman's not being abused and exploited?
Well, actually, pornography is covered in the bill. So, you know, we could literally have a whole show talking about the online safety bill and about some of the dangers that are presented to children and young people through, and vulnerable adults too,